patties, veggie meat from oats. Make sure that it is cooked completely because you should not eat that raw. Now let's look at some things that we treat as grains but are really seeds, like quinoa. And black rice or wild rice is really a grain, but we treat these as grains. So let me tell you about quinoa. Quinoa has all of the amino acids that you need. So those are the building blocks of protein. So if you have a plant-based diet or if you don't eat rice, you can eat quinoa. But quinoa has something in its saponins naturally occurring. So it's quinoa, that's millet. Quinoa must be washed thoroughly under cold water. Just rub it together because saponins kind of bubble up and it looks like soap. And I had a friend who's trying to eat healthy and he started eating quinoa. He said, I can't eat that stuff. It tastes terrible. I said, did you wash it before you cooked it? No. Well, that's why. So make sure you do that. And plus you need that for health. Quinoa is a seed, but we treat it as a grain. Same for wild rice. You're going to wash that the way you would just regular rice. Now let's get to millet. These are just examples of ways that you should prepare your grains so you can get optimum digestion. Millet is, a lot of people associate this with bird seed. I know Daddy used to have us find bird seed and we used to always feed the birds, especially when it snowed here, because our southern birds are not used to that yucky white stuff laying on the ground. So he would always take out some seeds. We would take bird seeds out and feed the birds. But millet is a grain that humans can eat. I actually make my special K loaf out of millet because I don't use the cereal. But this needs to be washed. It's just another example of how you need to wash and soak a grain so that can be completely hydrated and cleansed of any aflatoxin that may be occurring or anything that it came in contact with when they are bagging it at the processing plant. And always I use a little bit of vitamin C powder. So let's get to what we love, or at least I love, legumes, all kinds of legumes. So if you can't eat one, there are many, many others that you can eat with different health benefits. They have similar health benefits, but some have more than others. And I tried to you should soak your beans. And I forgot to soak this so that you can see. I just put it in some water last night, but I wanted to put it in some water yesterday so you can see. I don't know if you can, looks like foam on top. So you soak beans, just think of that as the gas that would not be coming out of you. It's going in the water. And you soak the beans and you change the water. You soak it overnight. I like to soak mine a couple of days. Just keep changing that water. Of course, I have my little secret weapon here. And that's all before you cook it. Now, if you don't have time to soak it, this is a trick you can do. Of course, they need to be washed thoroughly. You take your beans, put in a pot, bring it to a boil for maybe about 10, 20 minutes. Pour that water off and you'll see that foam rising. Rinse it off in cold water. Make sure it's cold water. Then you take it, boil again for less time. Rinse all that other stuff off. And then you go ahead and cook it the way that you normally would. And to me, the best way to cook is the Instapot or pressure cooker. That is, to me, the best way to cook beans because we know that pressure and that heat is going to get to that inside, that center, so that it's completely hydrated and cooked thoroughly so that you can have optimum digestion and then in turn better health. And especially if someone you're taking care of is sick, or if you're sick, you definitely have to go through these steps, either soaking or doing that express, like I just did, express cleaning of your beans so that you can have optimum health and less gas. Let's just be honest here. One thing that you don't have to do with that are lentils. Lentils are quick cooking. You don't need to soak them for long periods of time. You do need to wash lentils. And and lentils come in different varieties. Here's the black beluga lentils that you can make caviar out of if you want to. Brown, I think, is the most common. And red lentils, I have to tell you, red lentils cook very quickly, more quickly than any other lentils. They will cook so much that they will disintegrate. So that if you're making a soup and you use lentils, it will actually thicken it and you will not see the lentils in there. It'll be like that's your thickener. But these are something that you don't need to soak like you do the other ones because they're so thin and tiny, but you still have to clean them properly. Now, one thing you can skip all these steps if you have some fresh peas like this. Someone gave this to me. I don't know if they want to be identified, but this came out of our family friend, or almost like family garden, fresh picked and then frozen. These were soft. They weren't hard and like the dried ones. So you just rinse off any, dirt that may have come from when you were picking them, and you go ahead and cook those. And have other friends of the family, I don't know if they want to be identified, but they bring us fresh lima beans from someone's garden. The only thing you do is rinse them off and you cook them. You don't have to go through all of these steps. But when it comes to something hard, like whole grains, which we need, you have to take, if you can, that extra step so that you can get optimum cleaning and digestion and optimum health. So are there any questions? And these are just examples. There's wide variety of grains and legumes and seeds that we can eat. Any questions?
Well, since there are no questions, then I'll make a comment.
Jada, I do have one question.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily, the nutrient that we're trying to get out of these grains and legumes. I mean, I know beans. I think they're a good source of protein, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But now these grains and legumes, what's the primary nutrient?
Well, you need fiber.
You need fiber. Okay.
So whole grains have fiber that we need.
Gotcha.
And also different ones have more than the other. Like the quinoa has all 9 essential amino acids. I don't remember them all. I know the branch chain amino acids, but I don't remember all of the essential ones. But that is amazing for a plant product because meats have all of those because it is they are the building blocks of protein. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein, and flesh is protein. Okay. But if you can find a plant that has all of those, you don't have to kill an animal and eat it. Yeah. You have it there. Mm-hmm. And also B vitamins. You can find B vitamins, which we need for energy, we need for emotional health, in whole grains as well. And then there are a whole other list of them, but those are the main ones that come to my mind right now.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have something that's very similar to grits. And so, the millet that you're talking about, that stuff was always available. But I must confess, we call it poor people food. And every time they make it, we never want to eat it. And we left it there just at the table. But recently, I learned about what millet actually has. It has more health benefits than rice that we know, which we actually prefer to eat. And so it's interesting that when you don't know, how you can mislead yourself as a result of things that you just don't know. But typically we prefer to eat rice as opposed to that. But while millet itself has a lot more health benefits than having to eat rice just every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
True.
And Steve, to answer your question, some grains help with inflammation. I don't know, there's a school of thought in nutrition that a lot of diseases we have are caused by inflammation. So certain grains can help you lower your inflammation index, lower stuff. So some whole grains are very good for that purpose.
Yeah.
That is true.
Thank you. Yes.
And different grains have different nutrients. So you find out what you need the most in your diet and maybe add more of that into your diet.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you don't have the vitamin C to wash your grains with, what would you suggest you use instead?
Well, if you don't have vitamin C basically is just to put in there to kill the mold, the aflatoxin that's naturally occurring that in soil that will get in there. And a lot of times in the processing, the grains may be wet at the farm and not completely dried, and that will grow mold spores. And you know what the Bible says about mold. Mold is a killer. So I would suggest if you can't do that, then maybe put a little bit of vinegar, like a little bit of white vinegar in your water, or just really wash it thoroughly. There's another thing you can get that I don't want to suggest here, but I have hydrochloric acid drops that I put in, and then I'm not telling anybody to do that, but I do that.
So you just don't
And I
want to
have
start
some hydrochloric acid, and I put some drops in there as well. Maybe if you have, I remember reading in one of Dr. Clark's books, she suggested if you have some riboflavin, which is vitamin B2, that can help detoxify your foods. So maybe you could open up a capsule if you have a B complex. Maybe that will help. I've never tried that, but I did read that in one of her books.
Jada, well, let me ask you something now. So cooking it is not, I mean, won't cooking get rid of those, that mold and stuff like that?
And that's why we have to prep and cook it thoroughly.
Okay.
So if you aren't cooking it thoroughly or cooking it as much as you can where it's getting to the core, then it's not going to kill all of it.
Okay. Yeah. When I see that, well, I'm not a great cook anyway, but most of my stuff is a little bit overcooked, I think. When
it comes to grains, like vegetables, we shouldn't cook vegetables a lot.
Okay.
But grains, you need to. So if your grains are a little overcooked, then it's okay.
Okay. Good. Okay. So
grains and beans too. Yeah, beans too.
Okay.
You can boil beans all day long. So remember your lentils, which can be a good thing, they are going to just completely fall apart.
Okay.
Which can be good.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, great.
So any more questions?
Great job again. Wonderful.
Can you?
And if you can, if you don't have one, if you can, maybe one day get a pressure cooker. That's really good for thoroughly cooking your beans.
Yes.
And if you have one and you haven't used it, you try using it. But you still need to prep your food before you cook it in there to completely clean it, wash it thoroughly, soak it, and get a pressure cooker. And then these overnight cookers, these things are great.
Yes.
Instapot is good as the pressure cooker.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
The Instapot is good as a pressure cooker.
Can someone else hear her? Because I couldn't hear her.
Voice is muffled.
Is an Instant Pot just as good as a pressure cooker?
It's the same thing. Instapot's just a brand name. Instapot is a pressure cooker. Like, I don't even know if this is called an Instapot, but everybody started calling it Instapot, but it's a pressure cooker. So yeah.
You guys ask
And it's
more
wonderful.
questions. That way we can use our 1 hour.
For the pressure cooker.
No, no, I was just referring to Sam. That way we
Oh.
can use up our 1 hour show.
So, are there any more questions? And remember, these are just a few examples of whole grains and legumes. There's so many that we can eat for optimum health, and we want to cook it and prep it so we can get the best out of it and the most digestion. And
So
if you're sick,
what's the name of that beans, that yellow kind of beans in that clear bowl? What's the
oh,
name?
these are garbanzo or chickpeas right here.
Okay.
And I can tell you a funny story about the chickpeas. I made some blondies, which are, brownies, but I made some out of the chickpeas. And I gave some to Sam, but I didn't tell him what they were until after he ate a couple of them. And then I said, I made those out of chickpeas. He said, "What? You're not supposed to make desserts out of beans."
Hey, that's it.
So do you put season just in them?
Oh, I season everything.
Okay.
I love seasonings because the herbs and spices are nothing but tea. I mean, that's basically what they are. They're just tea that tastes good. So you can season your food and then get a lot of health benefits. Rosemary helps to kill bacteria, but then it tastes good. And I mean, there's a myriad of herbs and spices that you use that have health benefits that you could take alone or you use to season your food.
Okay.
And one other thing, Jada, and that is when we talk about legumes, I hadn't heard that term too much, but does that cover the category of beans and lentils and stuff like that? Legumes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And if you can find someone who can pick them fresh from their garden, that's a treat. That's wonderful. You can skip all that soaking.
Sam, I'm hoping that you're taking notes for the Deacon dinner that we're gonna have at your house.